Good evening and welcome to Nox Mente at a special time tonight. Tonight's guest is K. Montana Jordon, or just Montana, I guess now. Montana is an occult specialist and works as an independent consultant to several local and international paranormal and parapsychological research organizations. In addition to her investigative casework, she holds lectures and teaches classes on occult-related topics. She has been a guest on a myriad of radio, podcast, and film projects. Montana is the direct descendant of two distinct bloodlines from the Salem Witch Trials. She is the 10th great-granddaughter of the historical Susannah North Martin, who was hanged in 1692. Montana is also the 10th great... Did I write that already? Both are... I read that right. No, I didn't. Montana is also the 10th great-granddaughter of the historical Rebecca Shelley Addington Chamberlain, who died in prison in 1692 while awaiting execution. This is a year. Both an ordained minister and pagan priestess, she is currently obtaining her PhD in holistic theology. A Whitefish, Montana native, Montana Jordon now resides in Portland, Oregon. Montana, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Mary Samhain.
Mary Samhain to you, and yay, Montana! I'm so happy to have you on Samhain.
Yay! I know. Thank you. I'm so glad you asked. And it's funny. It's like when I got your message and you asked me, like I had a brief moment of panic. I was like, "Shit! How am I going to make this happen?" It's like it's Samhain. It's the busiest day of the year. It's the sacred day of the year. It's the most energetic day of the year. And then I was like, "Yes, let's do it." So thank you.
I'm thrilled, so thrilled. And our mutual friend, Eric, says just such wonderful things about you, besides all the stuff that can be said about you by other people. But I trust Eric and love him.
Thank you. Are we talking about Eric Arneson?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the best. Oh, he's so funny. Yeah, he's a good buddy of mine. And he actually messaged me this morning and he told me to tell you. So I have a message for you.
Oh, excellent. He's been on the show.
Yeah. That's what I've heard. Yeah, I need to catch up on your show. But so Eric told me to tell you, and this was he messaged me, I don't know, like 6 o'clock this morning. So this is really important.
Oh my God.
I'm supposed to tell you that you are the hottest witch in Washington.
Oh. Oh my goodness. That's almost a marriage proposal.
Right? Yeah. Hey, Eric. Hey.
You better watch out.
I know. Yeah. So funny. So there you go.
Oh, Eric, I love you. Thank you. Just a shout out to Eric. That just made this night even sweeter.
Yeah, no, Eric's the best. Yeah, I went to one of his events. When was that? 2 weeks ago? One of his tarot readings with wine pairings in North Portland, and he was pretty accurate. His cards totally called me out on my shit. I was like, "Thanks, Eric."
What deck was he using, Montana?
Alchemical Tarot, I bet. Was the Alchemical Tarot?
You know what? I think it was. That's his go-to one, right?
Yep.
That's my go-to one as well. It's so great.
Yeah, definitely. And it was funny because the cards, I was thinking about a very specific person in a very specific situation in my life, and trying to figure out the balance between, how to be open to it and what does it mean with, all of these new changes and, all the professional commitments that I have coming up in the next couple of years, a lot of exciting things lined up. And the cards totally said something that I didn't want to hear, but they were right. And Eric was like, "Well, this is a case where you probably don't want to think or act logically, Montana." I was like, "Son of a bitch," Yeah. So don't go to Eric.
If you want the truth.
Yeah. Don't do it.
Yeah, he's really talented. I keep meaning to get out to one of those. And I will, especially now that I've connected with you also. So
yay! I was just gonna say, he just sent me the invite for his next one. It's at the end of December. I don't remember, but maybe we can coordinate and we can go to the next one together.
Let's make it a date, girl. Let's do that.
Ooh, I would love that. See, the new year is already looking up.
It's a witchy new year already.
Right? Happy New Year.
Truly. And also what a very auspicious time this is for those of us that see through the veil anyway. But I think more people that are I don't know what the word is. People that are more entrenched in the hardness of reality, I guess, are actually honing in on should I say, supernatural, that there's more going on around them. I'm noticing more people coming to a realization that there's more to the world than
Oh
what
my
they were
gosh.
thinking. Are you noticing this
Right.
too?
Oh my gosh, yes, ma'am. And it's about time too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
it's more it's both from both ends of the spectrum. What I'm seeing in both my personal and professional work, it's on the personal end of the spectrum as well as the generic end of the spectrum. So on the personal end, what you just said, I think we are getting to this point where we are starting to realize you're looking at institutionalized religion versus spirituality,
Mhm.
realizing, if there really is a godhead or heads, what do they mean, and are they relevant? Do we actually need them? Because we don't need any type of religious base to follow inside of being moral people. The difference between morality and religion,
Mhm.
and that philosophical dilemma. So I think individually, people are starting to respond to everything that's happening within our society, within our politics, within our media, and people are getting more pissed off. And a symptom of that, if people are starting to slowly become more woke. So I see more individuals starting to come around and challenge themselves and ask the right questions, and they're starting to take action. In addition to the fact that I think we are in a very exciting time spiritually, where we're starting to evolve past institutionalized religion and get back to our archaic pagan roots. Very exciting, very spiritual, very beautiful, and very necessary. So very relevant, especially with everything that's going on in politics today. Generically speaking, I think people as a whole, the human collective, we are starting to recognize and tap into that higher inner consciousness.
The best thing we can do for our own growth and uh, for our own growth, I'll leave it there, is to actually just ask questions
Hmm.
and question the world around you and question your reality. And you can do this from being stable. You can do this from a stable ground, and just see where the questions lead you. And that's one of the things I notice with people that are so closed down, is that reality is exactly as they've been told, as they make it. It makes them feel comfortable, and questioning is a very radical act. It's actually very political to question your reality. And this goes across the board, from politics to religion to your job.
Absolutely.
It's been weaponized and made political or religious. It's
Absolutely.
more than that. You know, I
Yeah.
always just made me think, Nish, that my mom would get so mad at me because I always ask why.
I was that kid.
She's like, oh my God, shut up.
No, that's a mark of intelligence. And we have
Yes.
seen that, throughout history, not just like inside of our wars, but even with literary movements. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm a huge fangirl for romantic literature. I love the romantics. So the romantic movement that took place in the 1800s in Britain, at that time, they were responding to the Industrial Revolution and all of these machines that were starting to take place and destroy nature and Gaia and Mother Earth and the Romantics. And we're talking William Blake, William Wordsworth,
Oh, yeah.
Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein, my all-time favorite frame story. They basically they fought back against what society was telling them, and they were like, no, we're going to rebel. We're not going to sit in your church. We're not going to be a part of the machine. We're going to rage against the machine. We're going to go back to our pagan roots, and we're going to climb mountains, and we're going to swim naked in lakes, and we're going to worship each other and worship ourselves and worship nature that way. And so that's the whole thing. Like even in the 17 and 1800s, and how the Romantic movement affected not just literature but music and artwork and paintings as a whole. So even back then, that was considered a rebellious act, being true to yourself and, again, raging against the machine and saying no, to the status quo. So yeah, it's really interesting, what you just said, Jerry, about, like fighting back and being rebellious. It's not about being rebellious. It's about being true to yourself.
And it's a great night to honor those that have gone before us. I mean, that's what this night is about.
Hmm.
And so I'm glad you bring up powerful names from the past in the romantic movement. And of course, there are many others, but
Hmm.
that is what we're doing here. Also, is honoring whatever this illusion of the past is. And on that note, let's talk about your past.
Okay.
Let's move into Nox Mente.
I love it. Yeah, it's good segue. Anyways.
So
Yeah,
give
since
us
you already wasted 10 minutes. No.
Oh yeah, wasted.
Wasted, yeah, because nobody's listening right now. Yeah, this is bad. I'm
I
gonna
know.
go.
That's it, Jerry.
Chick talk, you got it out of the way. It's all good.
Oh my God, you got these. We're loudmouth women,
Right? Yeah.
I would have to leave the room, I think, if you two were together.
I know, right? Okay, so Montana, tell us about the world as you experienced it when you were as far back as you can remember, and what the world was like that you experienced, how you experienced it, what was affecting you, what did you love, and since we're on Samhain, let's make a focus tonight in some of these meanders on some of the paranormal and scaries and all that kind of fun stuff too.
Ooh, yeah. Such is my life.
Yeah, mine too. We're living it, baby.
Oh my God, yeah, we are. Yeah, large and in charge. Yeah. For me, it's interesting to circle back to what you were saying, Niche, a couple of minutes ago about reality, about people, you know, if they choose to accept their reality being one way as opposed to another, because we know that there are layers, we know that there are other dimensions, we know that there are other realms. It's been scientifically proven that energy cannot be destroyed. Ergo, that means we know that there is an afterlife, that there is reincarnation, that there are all of these amazing, wondrous things past what we are able to identify with our own main instrument, with our body, with our meat sack, and with our five senses. And so reality is basically self-definitive. So with that said, true spirituality is a never-changing journey, in my opinion. So my reality literally shifts all the time. So, I wouldn't say it goes as far as, when people wake up the next day and they're say, wow, I'm a totally different person today than I was yesterday. I think it's important what you said, Niche. I think it's important to honor, our blood and where we come from and everything that took us up to where we are today. And that doesn't just include me and my life and my days and the choices that I made. I'm talking about my ancestors and the blood that came before me, and mainly my witch grandmothers and all the other powerful women that I'm so fortunate to descend from. So my realities, and I say realities because I have multiple realities, because there are layers, because I do see and feel and experience things very differently than normalized people. And that also includes my dream work. So I'm super excited to talk about my dreams at some point with you guys tonight too. So yeah, realities to me is self-definitive. So one thing is going to mean something different to me than it does to somebody else. And that's the metaphysics behind it all. That's the philosophy behind it all, and that's what's so fascinating about it.
So when you were little, did you have a relationship with nature? I know you're from Montana, so I'm going to assume you did.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, that's a specific question. I needed that. Yes, I've always been a big hippie girl by nature. I've always been the girl that like hates to wear shoes. I always want to be, barefoot, and I always wear,
Sister.
long hippie skirts. Yeah. And I won't like brush or wash my hair for days at a time until somebody makes me. My master stylist is also my best friend, so that poor man, like, he tolerates like so much abuse. And like, I'll go camping and backpacking for 2 weeks and then come back home and show up at his salon, and he's like, what the hell did you do to your head? And I'm like, that's why I have you. I was busy communing with Gaia. Yay. But yeah, even as a child, being from Montana, I call myself a mountain woman. I don't necessarily call myself a country girl when I say that I'm a mountain woman. That phrase to me makes me feel very connected to Gaia and the north and the winter and the ice, and which is ironically, where I descend from, coming from my Viking heritage. So learning more about my ancestry and my bloodlines, like the mountains and the cold and the snow, that's inside of me. That's innate. So, yeah, I've always been somebody, who would much rather go play outside than be inside. And that includes, I've always wanted to find my spirituality outside of the four walls of a church. I've always wanted to, find these different senses and realities of myself, running free through the woods and backpacking and camping and, turning my phone off for a week and really communing that way. And we do know as a paranormal and parapsychological researchers that electronics and electricity and, EMS, that they really do distort our perception, that they really do mess with our own energy field. So it's good regardless, just to, get out in nature and run and be free.
Yeah, I think more than ever, that's how we're going to need to cleanse ourselves from a lot of the electromagnetic craziness.
Mm-hmm.
So back in your early days, what was there? What kind of pop culture inspired you? Like for me, it was definitely reruns of the original Addams Family. I mean, it's all the obvious for me. So I just have a feeling, but I did love all that, and I loved old movies, and so it was stuff that I actually gravitated towards. And that was pop culture. It was just older than me.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. It's funny. I actually never really got into any of that stuff until I became an adult. I wasn't one of those like goth kids in high school. I never wore black when I was younger. I wear all black now all the time. And, I wear big boots now, but I was never one of those, teenagers growing up. I always thought that those kids were the weirdos. I was like,
oh, well, black is so flattering to everyone.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Totally.
And it's funny. So for me, a lot of people get into witchcraft or paganism or ghost hunting in general because it's trendy, because they see it on TV, they see it in the movies, and they don't really understand it. So they don't really have an emotional connection to it. I was never really exposed to any of that stuff growing up. I was brought up in a very conservative Christian household. So it wasn't until I became an adult that I started to see some of the things that were reflecting pop culture, but those were things that I already knew to be there because they were already innate. They were stirring from someplace deep inside of me. So even as a child, I started reading books on paganism and Satanism, and my mother just had no idea what to do with me,
So talk about the Christian stuff when you were little. What kind of Christian stuff? How were you exposed to it? How deep did it run?
It ran pretty deep. My parents took us, I'm a middle child. I have a big brother and a little sister. And my parents took us to church when we were little. I don't really remember going to church, but it apparently happened. And when my sister was born, my mom did have us all baptized Lutheran. And it's funny because when I realized that, I don't know, I think I was in college or something, because I went to a private Catholic college for theology and philosophy. So I was talking to my mom one day about baptismals, and she was like, yeah, I baptized you Lutheran. I was like, what? Like, why would you do that? Why? But it's funny because, as much as I don't agree with it, it's at least my mom, if she was going to baptize me, at least she baptized me Lutheran. Because again, to talk about, rebellion and rebellious nature, Martin Luther was rebelling against the Catholic Church, and I'm all for that. So I think he's definitely a lesser of the spiritual evil.
I don't have any baggage with any of it, so I find it interesting. I like that he did rebel against the church, which I only learned later, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always cool.
Sorry, I was drinking water. Martin Luther was actually pretty cool. He basically, told the Catholic Church to go F off, and he did what he wanted to do. And, we need people to do just that. So anyways, I was brought up in a house with, Bibles sitting out. My parents have a painting of Jesus in their foyer, hanging in their house right now. Even as a child, I was very interested in learning more about God and religion. But because I didn't have that background, I didn't have any emotional attachment yet. I didn't understand why I was so passionate about it. I didn't understand where it was coming from. And then when I went to college and I started to learn more about theology versus religion and, what everything was as a collective whole, that was when I really started to understand, oh, well, that's why I didn't agree with this, and that's why, I've always identified myself as a pagan because, we are pre-Christians, we choose not to subscribe to institutionalized religions. So anything that predates Christianity. And that was solidified for me with the college that I went to. I was a part of the honors theology program, and my academic advisor was a nun, and she was the head of the theology department, and she hated me as I was the only non-Catholic there. So that was fun. But I made a choice to go to that school because Catholic schools are the best. They have the toughest curriculum, and I wanted, to get the best education I could get.
I thought Jesuit schools were the best.
They're pretty good too. Yeah. And I'm basically the only person like myself in my family. Everybody else is, God-fearing. Everybody else, identifies with being Christian. And so I participate in religious events like, we get together for Christmas. I don't necessarily celebrate Christmas. I celebrate my version of Yule and what that means for me. But yes, it's definitely been tough. Even as a child, I was always the odd one out. Nobody never really understood me, and I've just learned to appreciate that about myself now.
I've got a couple questions here, but one I want to ask about. So I love all the Sacred Heart stuff, and I have Marys everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But she's the goddess to me. And I love the Jesus Sacred Heart stuff. What is the Lutheran Jesus portrait like?
Oh, good question.
Because the Catholic one, where it's sometimes a bloody heart, sometimes there's the crown of thorns and the fiery.
Yeah. The Catholic one is the more scary one.
Roman Catholic or
Episcopalian, all that. But the Catholics have good Jesus.
What did you want to know?
Like good Jesus imagery.
Lutheran.
I wanted to know the Lutheran one that was hanging in Montana's house. Like, what's that portrait of Jesus?
It's actually when we get done talking, I can find it and I'll send it to you. So it's an image that people are really familiar with. It's a really famous painting. I don't know how old it is, but it's just a white Jesus with like light brown hair and blue eyes. And
so no bloody heart or anything.
Oh God, no, yeah, nothing at all. Yeah, no.
Oh, I think Jerry's showing it. Okay, cool.
It's that one right there. Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I know that one. So, but I really love the Catholic one. Give me that bloody heart any day. I find it so powerful.
It is powerful. Yeah.
It is. That imagery, the imagery, it's just born out of paganism. Mm-hmm. So back here, what led you to your first, so in this early days too, and I want to get into dreams in the early days, but just to flesh out some of this, what led you to your first kind of occultish or paranormal or off your beaten track from what you were getting at home? What was the first book or inclination of the supernatural for you? Or witchiness, just general witchiness.
Honestly, it's all the same for me, and it all stems from the same place. So it would probably go back as far as to one of my first recollections with something paranormal. That's when I was a little girl. I think I was about 6 years old, and I was harassed by a dark entity in my house. And at the time, because I didn't have the background, I didn't know what it was. I just assumed it scared me. So I assumed it was something negative. So I just, with a Christian upbringing, I assumed it was, something demonic, something negative, that was trying to get me. And now I know that that's absolutely not what it was. I choose not to, live in fear. I choose not to make, fear-based decisions. And, as adults, we have that capability. We have that flexibility. So it started for me when I was really little. I could always see things. I could always talk to things. I could always, commune with things. I could manipulate energies. I could manipulate electronics. So even when I was little, and it wasn't until I started to grow into my own and become my own woman and my own adult that I realized that these things were witchy by nature and that they were paranormal by nature. And then working as a active paranormal researcher for all these years, starting to realize that things are less paranormal and more parapsychological, that it is more about the self.
Yes. Yeah. What was the experience, if you don't mind sharing?
I have a really bad memory. I mentioned that on the show that I did with Solaris. Yes. So it's all a bit of a blur to me, which is really interesting walking around with such a bad memory, because I literally walk around with and I wouldn't even describe it as like an emptiness or a void. I'm definitely not a devoid person. And I don't feel empty, but there's just something in there that I can't emotionally connect to with. And I think it's, these memories that I'm supposed to have. And I'm still trying to figure out why and what may have happened to me. And I think I'm getting closer and closer with that with my personal research work. So I would love to talk about that more sometime in the future. But with things that I think that I remember, this was my first recollection. I think one of the first things that I cognitively remember that actually put me on the path that brought me to the woman that I am now. And that's when I was about 6 years old. This was the house that I grew up in. We grew up in a really big house. I was downstairs. I remember being alone, but I don't know. I'm sure my mom was in the house somewhere. I was downstairs in this black entity. It was black in color. This black entity appeared to me, and it looked like it was wearing a cloak. It had a hood. I couldn't see its face, but I remember seeing a large mouth that was open that looked like a tunnel, like a black hole that was spiraling. Ooh. And its arms were outstretched, and it didn't have feet. I don't think it had feet. I don't remember seeing feet, but it floated, and it literally flew around my house like a few feet off the ground, and it would open up its mouth, and I don't ever remember it talking to me, but I remember it screaming at me and moaning and groaning at me, and it would outstretch its arms to intimidate me, like a mountain lion would if it was getting ready to attack you, to make itself bigger. And it would just chase me around my house. And I just remember crawling into corners and crying and waiting for it to go away. And it would always show back up. And of course, at the time I was, terrified as shit. I had no idea what was happening, but it was what I recollect, that memory, that incident. And it wasn't just the one time, but whatever that being was, I credit that to me being who I am and doing what I'm doing now. Because if that hadn't happened, and if he hadn't kept coming back, if he hadn't been persistent, if now I see him as somebody okay, Montana, who are you? Okay, Montana, you're being challenged today. Okay, Montana, you got to get out of this fear. You've got these things that you're supposed to do, Montana. You have the capability to see me. Okay, so let's figure this out. Let's make it happen. And so now, as terrified as I was when I was little, I'm grateful for that experience. And now I think I know who he is, and he shows up again every once in a while.
It was your wake up call.
So now, basically, so yeah. And it's funny because now that I'm getting into more of a heavy parapsychological research equipped field work, I'm even wondering, because I don't necessarily believe in demons, not the way most people would. I think it's a too of a Christianized term. So when I say a demon, I mean it's something different.
An energetic force.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, something that honors its darkness, because darkness is to be respected and not feared. Darkness is beautiful, and that it was something that appeared to me dark, but that was just its avatar. So understanding as an adult now and as a parapsychological researcher, is that an image that I willed? Was that an image that I needed to see for myself? Was that something that I subconsciously set in place for myself? Or was I not the self-mover in that situation? Was the being in complete control of that situation? And were they choosing to appear to me in that manner to literally scare me out of my wits? But so those are all questions I ask myself with, investigations that I do and calls that I get, who's the self-mover, who's really in charge, what really is free will, and how can we manipulate it?
Mm-hmm. The image of it with the black hole mouth is just amazing. I mean, I've not heard anyone say that. Another thing that came to mind is I know some people refer to the Reaper, not necessarily like the Grim Reaper, but they call similar descriptions of these as Reapers.
Yeah, and that would make sense because I commune with the dead, and that's even another word I don't like, because nobody's ever essentially dead, right?
Yes, I agree.
So I'll say, the embodied versus, the disembodied, the living versus the dead. But that that makes a lot of sense. Something, dark and eerie that it was associated to, darkness and night and that whole side of the spectrum. I've never been, I don't consider myself a light worker. I've never been that person to see, all the happy stuff behind people and the rainbows and, the angels and the pretty lights and sparkles that, other people claim to see. I see the dark shit. I see the shadow people. I see, like, I see people's bad intentions. I see something bad before somebody does it. I'm definitely more in tune with my darkness, but it's not it's not the negativity of it. It's not the negative side of darkness. It's just a different kind of energy, a different kind of power.
So this was not a dream. This was something you experienced. It's reoccurring in
Yes.
what we call waking life.
Yes, exactly. Yep, it happened in real time, and more than once, and it appeared to me over and over again over the years, pretty much at every house I've ever lived in.
That it's intriguing. Man, I want to talk about that more. So I've got that all circled. So back in and just to kind of wrap up the early life, do
Hmm.
you have what was your relationship with dreaming? And I know that you have already prefaced this with a bad memory, which I think is freeing. Let too many people live in the past.
Yeah,
Um,
I like that.
so, but were you an active dreamer? What were your dreams like that you can recall? What was dreaming like for you as a young Montana?
Good question. I don't remember much from when I was little, as opposed to how I dream now. What I do recall, I I'm not so this is why dream work is so fascinating for me. I think that dream work is hugely relevant both within paranormal and parapsychological research work, and of course just inside of spirituality as a whole. Um, but dream work is very significant and deserves more serious scientific study. And for me, I have never been a normalized dreamer. I don't dream normalized dreams compared to what it seems like humans dream. And for me, I've narrowed it down. And this is a something that I've been working on actively for years. Like, I'm a terrible dreamer. All of the shit that I can do, I'm such a bad dreamer. Like, I struggle with that. So that's something that I've been trying to personally empower myself with over the years. But I don't dream like a normal person. I tend to have two different sleep state scenarios. And the main one is recollections are all similar situations. And I'm doing, and they're not reoccurring, but they're all very similar. I am doing something specific in all of these, and whether I'm in a different environment or not, I have come to understand that these types of dreams are probably past life memories. So those are the types of visions I have in my sleep state. And number one. Number two is I have premonitions, and they don't always come true. They're not foolproof, but so I tend to not dream in the present. And what's also interesting about the dream work that I do, and I'm not, this is actually something really, really fascinating. And I would love to I need to figure this out more for myself and talk to more colleagues about this, as I'm still learning about this. But I know that my astral self is, I've learned that it's more powerful than I thought it was. And I think with dream work, that's when we do our soul travels. That's when we connect with, our inner consciousness. This is when we connect with other psyches of ourselves. That's why dream work is so relevant. And for me, I think that I don't dream like a normalized person because I am actually actively running around doing astral projection work. And even though I tend to be a really bad dreamer, I constantly have on almost a daily or a bi daily basis, literally people from all over. I have colleagues and friends in Finland and Scotland and Ireland. I have people that will call me or email me or text me and tell me that I showed up in their dreams again. So I apparently visit people in their dreams all the time. And I didn't think it was me doing it. I didn't think that I was willing that, but I'm researching it more and I'm practicing it more, and I think I'm starting to figure out how and why that happens.
So when you're astral projecting, what does that what does that look and feel like? What's that the how do you navigate it? What's the landscape look like? The architecture of it? Um, paint a
It's
picture for us.
it's going to be different every time because it's the same with whenever you experiment with psychedelics or when you go into any other type of energy session. Like every time I work with my Ouija board, um, every session is organic, so every session is circumstantial, so you can learn something from an incident that came before that, but every single time you do it, it's different because everything changes. There's like always some sort of glitch, there's always some sort of manipulation in the energy, and energy is constantly transferring and altering, so every single time you do it is different. So for me, when I am astral projecting, it is either me looking at myself or an experience in a past life, and I think that I am reliving a memory, but I'm getting so specific with it that it's not just me looking at a memory. I am actively inside that memory, and I wonder if when I'm doing these things that I'm trying to right a wrong. Yeah, I don't know if I think in my subconscious, if I'm like, okay, maybe I can change the past, maybe I can make this happen. I'm not quite sure what my motive is when I'm in that particular sleep state, when I'm looking at a past life memory. Whereas when I'm having a premonition, if I'm astral projecting, that premonition is something that is outside of me. So that's something that's external as opposed to something internal like a past life memory. So for me, astral projecting, it's quite literally when you exit out of your body. So you can literally see your body outside of yourself. So you know that you are still you and you are still your essence, your pneuma, your life force, but you are now at external stimuli. So you now have removed your earthly, your biological tether. You've removed your body, your meat sack, and you are able to essentially teleport. And that's why I think time travel is real. Time travel is possible. It's astral projection, it's dream travel, it's all the same.
Yeah, that's we constantly are talking about. I think it was Gordon White who really brought this to light. Was like it's all states of lucidity, really. It's
Hmm.
just where you are on that spectrum. Okay, and then so back one more question about young you.
Yeah.
Did you have fears or terrors? Were you afraid of? Was there things you were afraid of?
Hmm. I don't remember ever really being afraid of anything other than that dark entity, but it came around so often that I just kind of got used to it. So I eventually learned not to be afraid of it, which is interesting though, because even though I've always been a bad dreamer, my big brother always experienced really lucid night terrors, like even up until adulthood, even up until he was like 18 and moved out of the house. He would
Oh
have,
wow.
yeah, and he would sleepwalk and he would like scream in the middle of the night and wake us all up. Um, and a lot of colleagues that I work with that I have a lot of respect for, the theory that most people agree on is that night terrors is also related to a past life experience, some sort of a memory or a trauma that you're working through now in this life, in this body. And so that would also correlate with I have a lot of friends who are young mommies, and they come to me concerned with, their babies or their toddlers, that wake up in the middle of the night that seem to have bad dreams. And I have this one mommy who has a 3-year-old son, and he dreams that he is in a fire every night. And she took him to a psychotherapist, and they worked with him, and the psychotherapist came to believe that her little boy actually died in a fire in his past life. And they got him to talk about it, and he has since been able to relinquish his fear of fire, so now he'll like he's not scared to go camping because he never wanted to go camping because he was scared of the campfire. He didn't understand why people wanted to start fires because he always associated fire with death and pain and agony and trauma. So even at a young age, even when we're 2 and 3 and 4 years old, we have that innate understanding. It's that whole biology versus spirituality. It's a hard balance to navigate.
Indeed, it is. Did you? And so, kind of on the subject, but this is timeless. Whenever it happens, um, have you experienced any form of like sleep paralysis?
That is a great question. I have not, although I have somebody very close to me, one of my closest friends, one of my most cherished people in my life. He does experience what he calls sleep paralysis because, of course, that's what the medical and the scientific community calls it. And he is very terrified of his experiences that he has during the night, and it's not very often he'll talk to me about them. So, what I can get out of him, my professional opinion is that he is not having these nightmares. It's not sleep paralysis. I think that he is an abductee. I think that he's got ETs that are coming into his room and messing with him.
Since you led us right into that, and we're kind of just flowing, what are your thoughts on all of that? Everything that kind of fits under that ET umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
Where is that with you?
I am learning, the more I grow, the older I get, the more I see that most of the shit is real. ETs are real. UFOs, we don't call them UFOs anymore. We call them UAPs. They're real. Time travel is real. The layers and the veils, everything is real. Magic is real. Different people call it different things, and it's known, throughout the world, and different cultures and different religions. It's labeled under different names, but it's basically all the same, and it all comes from the same place. And for me, that's the higher working inner consciousness that we're all a part of. And everybody, we call ETs, extraterrestrials, and we know that they are interdimensional beings, that they are able to come and go easier than we are. And that's why we're fascinated by them. We're trying to figure that out. How do they maneuver through their environment so easily when we seem to be tethered, to Earth and our biological meat sacks and to gravity. And the thing of it is that we know that we are made up of energy. Some people will call that a spirit or a soul, but regardless, that the scientific definition of that is that we are interdimensional beings as well. We have the same capabilities that everybody and everything else has. We are just still trying to figure it out. I think that we are tethered, we're stuck in our physical body. So again, it's about navigating that balance, being a biological being, but also having a spiritual body, and, trying to figure out what that means to the individual.
Yeah, I hear you. And, it struck me early in my life that people were reading old literature and old like horror stuff and horror accounts, and then living in modern times since 1947, when it was really the ET craze.
Yeah.
That it was really my parents' era, but I mean, we're under that umbrella, where things from the Fae and all of that started to turn into extraterrestrials.
Mm-hmm.
And so they started to look similar to me. The accounts the Fae will abduct. You can be abducted by the Fae.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, these stories are everywhere. And so at some point it seemed like there were less of those, and all of a sudden there was the new ET on the circuit.
Mm-hmm.
And so that crossroad right there, or that point of connection, is fascinating to me. How we consciously wrap our minds around this experience that people are actually having, and not, how easy it is for, I guess, normies or normalized people to shutter it off,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's fairies or ETs, and yet there are too many of us in the world experiencing some high strangeness that I think is, aside from the percentage of people that may have psychotic tendencies,
Mm-hmm.
are credible. And so this all ties into what we talk about here. I would like to, since we're kind of at this crossroad here, what is the nature of consciousness for you? So this state of consciousness where we are right now talking, with this nowness,
Mm-hmm.
what what's the difference between this and other states? So, like you can have a memory and the memory can be weird. You have a bad memory, and that's I mean, I think that's illustrative of actually memory in general. It's not tangible.
Yeah.
It almost doesn't exist except for we bring it into existence through our will.
Mm-hmm. That's true. And we know that we can't trust our memories. We know that we can
Yes.
implant memories into other people's minds. So
Hmm.
we have to be aware of the fact that we have to be skeptical even of ourselves. And this is something I always mention in the classes that I teach and the lectures that I hold, that I think as a legitimate researcher and as a true academic, it's important that I maintain for myself, as well as, I feel like the moral and ethical obligation that I hold to my clientele and to, my academic circles as a whole, to always maintain a healthy level of skepticism. And for me, that means always staying open, staying open, staying open, staying open. However, being skeptical about it, questioning everything. And that means questioning my colleagues, questioning my clientele. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm running around accusing everybody of lying, but, being a woman rebellious by nature, questioning everything, wanting to know more, wanting to know why. So it's maintaining that healthy level of skepticism. And I think first and foremost within yourself, within the individual, always, reaching further and working harder and being like, okay, well, I had this experience, but what does it really mean? And how am I choosing to interpret this experience? If this experience seems negative, is this really something negative that happened? Or is this just my emotion behind it? And am I experiencing this from a fear-based lens? If I am, I have, the capability as an intelligent, conscientious being to step outside of myself and alter my emotion, alter my reality, alter my emotional connection to my encounter. And that is, essentially control and manipulation of energy, which is a main tenet of, paganism and witchcraft and energy work as a whole. But yeah, for me, bottom line is that everything is real. And the things that I didn't think were real 5 years ago and 10 years ago, I've seen them now. I've experienced them now. They're real. And there are still lots of things that I haven't uncovered yet. I have clients that call me and say that, they saw this or they experienced this. And I'm like, shit, I haven't yet. No fair, but I'm getting closer. And I think that the more I stay open and the more I stay skeptical, that I am in control of my realities, therefore in control of my consciousness, that there are different layers. And I think that also means that there are different layers of consciousness. There are different psyches, that there are different layers of our subconscious, different layers of, what we think we are as individuals. And of course, that makes up, our past, present, and our future. And then again, to, talk about when we are experiencing these things in an altered state, in a state of psychosis, whether, we're in a dream state or, we're astral projecting or we're experimenting with psychedelics. I think the reality of it is that with all of these layers, we are able to navigate through them all. So it's about being open and skeptical of this larger inner consciousness, that we know that it's there. We know that we're a part of it. Some of us are just able to, hold on to it better than others.
In your opinion, of course, this is Nox Mente, so all we're interested in is our guests' opinions and real deep feels, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't care about hanging stuff on a scientific method or anything. There's plenty of other places where that stuff can be talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the object? This is one of the great philosophical questions. I love all this stuff. So what do you think the whole meaning of this process of being dense in matter, like this kind of reality where we come in and we have this experience and then we leave? So we come in and we know we're going to leave. We learn that at least early on.
Yeah.
So, and then, there's death cults all around it, religions, and all this crazy wrapping that goes on. But at the core, there's something magical with the process, and there's something magical with the transition, and transitions in general. So what are your feelings on all this?
I think that our inner consciousness and our realities, plural, are essentially what we make them. And I know that might be a bit of a frustrating answer, because true spirituality is an ever-changing journey. So it's going to mean something different to one person, than it does to the other. But to circle back, defining what consciousness means to me, it has so many different layers and levels and depths that it's going to mean so many different things based off of like what direction you are looking at it from. So what did you ask me again? Your last question?
Well, so for you as a person in this experience we're all having, what is the process? What is life for? What is going on here? What's this about? And not, I really, I'm talking to you, so I don't care about anyone else at this moment. You are on stage, girl. And so what do you, at the core of it all, think the process of being a flower for whatever period, that's basically what we are. We're like a fruit or a flower. We bloom and die. What's that about?
I like that. My professional opinion would be, I don't know. That we are looking at things from every possible perspective, looking at things from, every possible known, culture, ideology, theology. And, we still don't quite understand everything that's happening. And that's why theology and spirituality and philosophy and metaphysics as a whole is so fascinating, because we know that science is limited. There's only so far science can take us. Science is great, but essentially, as paranormal and parapsychological researchers, we're trying to venture into a known afterlife, and science cannot calculate that. There are a lot of things in my line of work that science just won't measure. So there needs to be that perfect marriage of scientific inquiry and metaphysical inquiry. And for me, that is occultism. I'm an occult specialist. That's what I'm known within my academic communities. And for me, that bridging gap, that actual tangible bridge is occultism, is all things occultic and all things esoteric, which basically is an umbrella term, that stems into, anything and everything. So for me, I think that it is just about when we are stuck in our meat sacks, me and my physical, tangible body right now. I think where I am right now, I think it's about really experiencing my human experience. And that means literally living through the pain and the beauty and the terror and the cruelty of it all, and experimenting with my body and understanding that detoxification really hurts, and what that means, and how I can push my body, and how I can use the physical pain and these biological thresholds that I have to really open up my spiritual body. So again, I think it's just about honing into that balance. And I think that every time we are put back here and put into, these stupid tangible meat sacks, when I'm put back into a human body, it's I think again, I'm not the biggest fan of institutionalized religion, although Buddhism, and specifically Tibetan Buddhism, I think that they got I agree with a lot of their ideologies and their philosophies. I think they got it a lot right in terms of reincarnation, and not so negative to the point that, oh, we're all here to suffer, we're all going to suffer, and we're all going to die of broken hearts, and that's that. But the truth of the matter is that, we are humans, and we are called to live a human experience. And that means, all of the bad stuff as well as the good stuff. So for me, I think the more intelligent people and the people that recognize how to vibrate on a higher frequency and how to call into those higher vibrations, and that's a pathway to seeking and living in the higher inner consciousness that we're all a part of, and it's all accessible. Everybody can do it. I think the point is just figuring out how to navigate through that and to do it a little bit quicker and a little bit easier every single time. And if we are doing this on a repetitive motion, then that must mean that there is a bigger end goal. And that end goal is going to be different for other people. If you're looking at things through a religious specified lens, some people call it heaven, some people call it moksha. And that also circles back to that parapsychological question of, am I the self mover? Do I really have free will, and how lengthy is that free will? There are different cultures that say that when we die, we have that choice to reincarnate, and we choose, to be put back into this specific body, and we choose to be put back to where we are, and we are conscientious of all these choices. I don't think it's that black and white. But I also don't think that things are really that complicated. I think that the natural worlds are much more simplistic than we think we are. And that's why I think that man and beast are always going to battle with each other. That's another balance that we need to work on as a whole.
I totally agree. Every time my go-to is to look towards nature for answers, and the natural world, and animals in their natural environment, how they interact, and plants and how they interact, and all that. I think it's there for us to reflect upon. Also, I want to chime in. I think that all the major religions have a gem in them. I think that I feel like there are truths everywhere, and we are just like in Zelda, going around picking up gems. But on this note, this question popped up for me. Does reality form as you experience it?
Does reality form as you experienced it? So was that past tense? You said experienced?
No, experience it. So yeah, so like almost like the split.
Does it render before you?
Yeah. So, and this is a free will question, really. Like, do we create our reality as we're moving through this experience? So, again, you've been talking about this a lot, which I ask this question usually, but I didn't need to with you because you've addressed it. But free will, fate and intent, free will, and stuff that's more structured or fixed. So, with the idea of, especially as an occultist, and someone deep into the supernatural and paranormal, I think that, I'm curious as to where you stand on that. How does reality form around you? And I'm basing this off of the double split experiment, where the observer changes the outcome.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And we actually see that when we do Ouija board work, like when I do energy sessions, even if it's just with one person, with one clientele, or if I'm working as a group, like with a workshop that I hold, for example, because everything and everyone is organic, everything is constantly changing, everything is circumstantial. So it's very frustrating. You can learn things from one session and it won't apply to the next, and you're like, shit. So, and that's what's fun for me. Like, I love my job, but I literally, like, I'm still learning. There's still so much that I need to learn, and there's still, oh my God, there's still so much out there that I still have yet to uncover. And for me, that's all inside. So the more I continue to work on myself and have a closer, more intimate relationship with myself, then the more powerful I'm going to be, and the more I'm going to be able to contribute to my environment, and hopefully honor my grandmothers and all the wonderful women that came before me, in terms of honoring my bloodline, especially tonight of Samhain. But yes, I absolutely believe that we create our realities as we experience them. I think that because everything is circumstantial and everything is organic, we are extremely powerful fruitful, amazing interdimensional beings. And I think that we all possess parapsychological capabilities. I think that we all have the capability to garner certain skills. And for some people, that's going to be, telekinesis. For some people, that's going to be clairvoyancy. It's, like the sky is, literally, like it's like there is no limit. There's so much that we can do. And I think that that's, again, to circle back, that's why it's important to maintain that healthy level of openness and skepticism, to say, hey, I can do this, but how can I do this, and what does it mean? How can I push myself, and how am I going to make this session more powerful today than I did it yesterday? So in doing that, I am creating my own reality, and I'm basically making my own rules. And being as deep into witchcraft and paganism as I am, I know that we have the capability to create and control and manipulate energies, and like baby energies and old energies and energy fields. It's all the same. So with that said, because everything is organic, energy is always inside of you and around you and spiraling around you. And from a metaphysical standpoint, we know that, everything is made up of energy, and that different things just appear to us in different manners, and that different, we have these different avatars. But I'm starting to understand more the older I get, that I do have more free will. And to me, that means being aware of my role in the larger inner consciousness, tapping into what my powers are, and what my femininity means to me, and what being a powerful woman means to me, and giving that back into my relationships and my family and my sisterhood and my community.
Excellent. Do you think, is it possible that, so this is a question I constantly ask myself this. So it's all these questions I ponder, because that's how this was all born of. This is what this is born of, questioning our reality, right?
Yeah.
So this is a question, it's one of the great literary subjects that you see, and it's definitely played out in some of my favorite films ever, like Siesta. And I was asking, is it possible that we're actually already dead? I mean, I know that we can cut ourselves and die and appear to bleed out and all that, but is it possible that this is some sort of review or loop of any kind?
Yes, absolutely. I think that if one thing that I've learned working in the field after all these years is that anything is possible. And that's why it's so freaking terrifying. Absolutely, it's possible. And it's probably not only possible, it's very plausible. It just makes sense if you think about it. And to take that a step further, it wouldn't even necessarily be an embodiment versus disembodiment scenario. I was actually talking to a friend about this the other day. I'm super focused on working with ETs right now, because I had, that I told Solaris about it, that really profound ET encounter I had a year and a half ago. And that was, the first one that I think I remember cognitively. And then since that happened, it's like, something shifted inside of me, and another avenue of myself was opened up. So since that happened, I've been experiencing things differently. I've been experiencing my reality differently. So I'm still trying to understand what that all means to me. But another scenario, and this is actually super freaking terrifying, another scenario that is very plausible, it makes a lot of sense, is we know that there are ETs, and it makes sense to say that, they're more advanced than we are. They're smarter than we are. They're running around, doing whatever it is that they're doing, and we're trying to keep up. There's very strong evidence that points to the possibility that we are our world, the little reality that we live in here on Earth, within our solar system, within the Milky Way galaxy, that we're not created out of our own free will, and we were not only created out of a god or a godhead. a monotheistic Godhead, but that we were created by what our pagan ancestors called sky gods, that they very well could have been and are ETs, these interdimensional beings that came before us that have proven to be more advanced than us. And if that's the case, then why? And that changes the entire philosophical debate behind free will. So that means that we don't have free will, or that means we have limited free will, which means it's not free will. So that literally opens up like this whole can of creepy parapsychological worms. And understanding, if they were here before us, then does that mean that they are the creators? Are they the self movers, or does something come before that? And that also raises a bunch of questions based off of religion and wars, and our society and everything that modern day technology is based off of. If we so let's say, for example, that this reality was created by ETs, and they are in charge, and that's why they abduct us, and that's why they mess with us, and they mess with our memories. There is also strong evidence that points to the theory that it was the ETs that created and implemented into our societal structure the whole idea of a Godhead and religion, to basically keep us distracted from them and to keep us battling with each other so that we didn't see the bigger picture. So to circle back to what we were talking about at the beginning here about an hour ago, that for me is a very large part of the inner working consciousness, and individual people becoming more woke, and then the general collective starting to respond to these different things and these changes in the cosmos and these different energies that are, starting to pop up. There are a whole bunch of glitches, and people are starting to remember things that they aren't supposed to remember.
Like what?
Gary, you look like you had a question. That's why
I forgot. She just talked too long. So I forgot what it was. My bad.
I go off on tangents. I need to be interrupted when I talk about this shit.
Okay.
And I'll forget about something and circle back and be like, I don't know what I was saying.
I don't remember now. It was about, I don't remember.
Sorry, just interrupt me. I will literally talk until
I keep a notepad going.
So do I. I didn't think you'd talk to. Well, I got doing something else. So all good.
So we'll just carry on here. So the ET encounter thing that you talked about with Solaris, I want to know. So that story's out there, and we love Solaris, and so check that show with Jordan Montana out for sure. Check out Solaris's radio show, so you can get that story. But give us an idea of what's changed since then. You mentioned things changed since that, and that was provocative for me. I wanted to know more.
Yes. Thank you for catching that. What changed for me was the manner in which I receive my messages from external stimuli. So the manner in which I receive images, quite literally, my level of touch change, the way I hear things change. It was like after that encounter, I had like something inside of me. And when I talk about this, I'm even doing it right now subconsciously. I'm pointing to the center of my chest. So very subconsciously, inside this particular chakra, I feel like something physically shifted, and it has like tentacles that are leaking into all of these other things and changing my perception and changing my reality. So one example of that is that for a while after that first experience that I had, where they appeared to me and they're like, "What are you doing here? Get out, get out, get out." I knew that they were super mad at me because I couldn't talk about it for months afterwards. I physically could not talk about it. I would think about it all the time, and I would, sit down and start to write about it, and then would try to tell somebody about what happened. Like I called a couple meetings to talk to a couple people I trusted about it. Like, oh shit, like this, weird thing happened. Like this is weird even for me. And, I need to figure this out. And I physically wasn't able to talk about it. Like they were preventing me from talking about it. So that alone right there. So the first few months after that happened, that just ignited me. That pissed me off. You know, I was like, I don't care if you guys were so powerful that you interrupted, you know, my astral projection experience. Thanks for that. And now, you know, it's like, as a woman, like just how violating that is, like to know that something else was like inside of me and I could feel it shifting, and that it when I tried to talk about it for months afterwards, it brought about a excruciating pain on the right side of my head. So it's a different kind of, as a woman, that was a different kind of violation that I hadn't experienced. And half the people I've talked to about that were like, oh, well, that's a warning. You know, they're just letting you know, don't talk about them. And I'm like, no, that doesn't resonate for me, because this is my life. This is my reality. This is my experience. And I'm not going to let some weird ET that appeared to me, you know, out of a bubble tell me what I can and can't do. So I'm still figuring all that out.
Yeah, right on. Fuck them.
Yeah. That's what
Yeah. Yeah.
You just kind of wrapped up my whole sentiment about that, you know, guidance and whatnot.
Yeah. Oh,
Which,
my goodness.
I remember what I was going to say. You were talking about free will.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to say that there's no way to tell. It could be either thing. Or both. It could be both and, you know. There's no way to tell if you have free will or not. There's absolutely no way. And
that makes sense.
Yeah. So if you believe you have free will, then you can act your life. You can live your life as if you do have. And
yeah, that's true. So you're creating a reality that you want for yourself. Yeah.
Exactly.
So
which you can't really know if that was supposed to happen or not.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
That's sensical.
It's, you know, it's unanswerable question.
That's true. And that's terrifying. You know, oh my God, it is. It's terrifying. It's like, okay, well, what is real? You know, like
nothing's real.
What does all of this mean? Nothing's real, man.
Yeah, nothing's real. No, I'm a projection-based person. So.
Yeah, but even with the idea that we would accept that nothing's real, and in that freedom of that idea, it's still like, man, it's real. You got to still do the stuff you have to do, right?
You still have to go to work.
There's still consequences. And so, you know, we have to maintain a reasonable sense on our shared ideas of reality. And so that's what makes it tricky. That's what gives it an edge that is different than, say, in our dreams.
No, that's a really intelligent observation. You're definitely right about that. And that's what I find so fascinating about theology and spirituality as a whole. It's just, there are so many avenues. There are so many different routes. Like there's never, you know, a wrong way or a right way. There are so many different ways. And that's why occultism and paranormal and parapsychology, as a whole, they are so fascinating and they're so relevant, because, you know, there's something to be said about each of these fields of work and each of these academias. And I think as you know, as woke people, we need to understand that in order to be, you know, higher, you know, vibrational beings, in order, you know, to work on these higher frequencies, that in order to be a part of this, you know, inner working consciousness, that we have to be open to all of that, you know, to not look at things through a religious specified lens, and to, you know, understand that, you know, the metaphysics behind everything, that we are in control. We absolutely are in control. However, you know, again, what does that mean in terms of the ETs? You know, because we know that they're in more control than we are. So that literally changes the playing field for everything. But
this is kind of, we've not done this on Nox Mente before. And I just have this urge. I want to do this with you, Montana. So you're the first. So it's like word association. And so,
okay.
And it's not lengthy. Okay. So just give me like the very first things that kind of come to your mind when I say these things.
Okay.
All right. Octopi or cephalopods.
The first thing that came to my head was a tentacle, but that's also because I started to see random tentacles around this last year, like just random tentacles in random places on random people.
That's Jerry.
It's not me. I'm clean. I have no attachments. Get out of here.
I'm just kidding, Jerry. Okay. Well, tentacles is good. And then
those are the spider thing.
Actually, let's pause here and let's talk about this because what you said is fascinating. So you're seeing tentacles around people. Can you give us a taste or an image, an idea of what's going on
Yeah.
with that?
Yeah, this is actually a fun story. I'll try to keep it short since I tend to go off on my tangents and it upsets Jerry.
Poor Jerry.
Poor Jerry.
It doesn't upset me. I love listening to you. I
This is our two witches and a Jerry episode.
Right, I know. It's so cute.
And I'm letting you both talk and enjoy it.
Okay, so tentacles.
Tentacles. So I went on a week-long camping trip in July for my birthday, and it was like over 4th of July weekend. My birthday was shortly after that, and everybody knows, like, I'm, hardcore outdoorsy pagan girl. I love to backpack. I love to, get outside and not shower for 7 days. So I went with a group of friends and to this very special mountain in Eastern Oregon. Very, very spiritual, beautiful, peaceful piece of land for me. And we actually, I held a few parapsychological experiments that weekend. Like I basically made somebody help me, with something. And cause I was like, well, we're going to the spiritual piece of land. I need to utilize it. And then of course, like we just had campfires and hiked and played, but
wait. Did you made them do it with your mind? Was that one of the experiments?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Just clarifying.
Yes. And so one night I had this experience with this so there's this it's like 240 acres. It's completely private, so there's nobody else up there. And I love to sleep in tents, so I'm either always in a tent or just outside under the sky, or if it's too cold or rainy, there's a cabin, so sometimes we'll sleep in the cabin. But this particular night, I was in a tent, and a couple of my guy friends were sleeping in the cabin. And this particular night, the avatar was a woman. She felt feminine, but she wasn't a human woman. She wasn't a ghost. She wasn't somebody that used to be a human woman. She felt very much like an ET, but a lot different than the ones that I've been seeing over these last couple of years. She was actually really scary looking. She looked like a dirty old hag, and she was also wearing a cloak. It's like they're always wearing cloaks, like they have to be so ominous. And
it's easier to render just a cloak than a whole body.
Right? Yeah. I'm just gonna put on a cloak. Yeah. And they always have their hoods on, like they always have to be creepy and so cryptic. But she appeared to me one night, and she was like she wasn't very friendly. She was trying to get into my personal bubble, and I had to basically like sit down and go into like this hardcore meditation session. And it probably literally only lasted about 10 minutes, but she was so strong, and I didn't know what she wanted with me. But she was manipulating me and just like trying to piss me off. And I was like fighting her. I'm like, no, go away. Well, then the very next night, my friends that were sleeping in the cabin, they came to me in the morning, and they're like, yeah, Montana, we had this really scary dream. And they both had different dreams. So they were both sleeping under the same roof in the cabin. They both each claimed that they had a different dream, but they both saw my scary hag lady in both of their dreams. And I was like, okay, this sounds like it's not a dream. I'm going to need more information, please. And so one of the guys told me that she actually spoke to him, and she told him, beware of the tentacles. And I was like, okay, I don't know what that means. That means nothing to me, whatever. I didn't think anything more about it until later that week. I was actually, it's going to sound completely crazy, but it's true. I was at a Mexican restaurant and having lunch with a friend, got up to go to the bathroom. I'm in the stall, I'm peeing, and there's nobody else in the bathroom with me, no human person. I'm peeing, and quite literally a disembodied tentacle comes up from underneath the stall, like there's like this crazy octopus person standing on the other side of the door. So I see tentacles come up from underneath the door, and they're like long and sleek and like very like alien-esque, and they like start to come up from underneath the door, like all like ominous, like being all creepy. And I'm sitting there, I'm peeing, so I can't get up, so I'm just watching these tentacles, and I'm like, am I crazy? Am I actually seeing these tentacles? And I wasn't drunk or anything. So I opened the stall door knowing I wasn't going to see anybody there, and of course there was nobody there. So I went back and I to my table, and I was like, yeah, well, that, that hag lady that was talking about, telling, our friend to beware of the tentacles, I saw the tentacles. So I'm trying, and since then I have seen tentacles around and on certain people. And I have understood. So the tentacle thing is still new to me, but I think now that that is a warning. When I see somebody with a tentacle near them, that means that they are not somebody good for me, and I'm supposed to go away. And it's taken me a while to figure that out.
Yeah, I would interpret it as some kind of vampirism happening through the tentacles.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and whatever that would entail along with it.
Yeah.
It's fascinating because I had a series of very strange dreams that involved kind of cephalopod like things. I went on Off Planet Media talking about it, and I've talked about it a lot. And so this is very interesting feedback for me. And then we had the wonderful Thomas Sheridan on our show recently, who was bringing to light the idea of how significant Lovecraft is to this modern world, and the mythos therein, right? The old ones coming out of the deep water with the tentacles, and how that stuff is now it's in the collective. We're seeing it. And so you're bringing another very significant piece to that narrative for me. I'm this whole show right now, that is a gem I needed to hear.
I've even heard to that point that you mentioned about the great old ones coming back and the whole Lovecraft mythos. I remember hearing a couple of years ago that, I remember hearing someone talking about how the Deepwater Horizon thing was actually a ritual to summon Cthulhu.
There's so much there that is like it's starting to be taken seriously, and I can't wait for this to unfold more.
Yeah, me too. I love it.
But the fact that you're seeing these is fascinating me, especially with this dream imagery I've had. Okay, so
and you guys weren't like looking at hentai before then, right?
No.
Okay. Would you like to look at hentai?
Did you hear us laugh together? That was, girl, this could be coven material. Anyway.
Right? Oh my God, I know. Like, we were both just cackling just now. Did everybody else hear that?
I've got it recorded. Don't worry, you will hear it.
That was in harmony. That is awesome.
That's funny. Oh my God, we're like old gods, tentacles.
I know. Okay, so all right, back to the word association. Deep water.
Yes. I don't know why, but the first thing I thought of was Flathead Lake in the Flathead Valley in Montana, where I was born.
That's all. That Flathead Lake is great.
Yeah.
All right, deep space.
Deep space. Man. I don't really have a word for that. I'm just seeing a lot of imagery. I guess if I had to put a word to it, I would say like ET or interdimensional, because that's how I perceive it now. Deep space. It's deep space is a part of all of us. Is interdimensional. Like we are deep space.
Oh, definitely. Okay, inner earth.
Inner earth. That to me would be Gaia and Mother Nature and nature as a whole, and romanticism and paganism and witchcraft, creation.
Okay, what about the deep forest? Like the very remote forest.
Mm. The first thing that came to my mind would be Gaia. Like, for me, I associate all that with my creationism, my womanhood, and my sisterhood, and my femininity, and my sexuality. That's where my powers come from, and that's how I connect to, the woods and the earth.
Excellent. What about dreams?
For me, that's a past life remissions. It's past life remembrances, or trying to understand or fix things from past lives. That's what it means for me.
How about spirit?
Spirit to me is just another word for energy or psyche or pneuma, whatever your breath life is, your life force.
Pneuma. What about soul?
Same thing as spirit and soul. They're interchangeable. I'm not a big fan of either of those words because they also denote a religious imagery. So I usually just say energy. So that's what I mean when I say energy.
So, all right, let's pause here for a second. Give us, and this is a general Nox Mente thing. I'm always asking, at least, like, how do you experience the ideas of spirit and soul? Are they separate? And you just kind of gave us a little header there.
Mm-hmm.
So, stripping them of religious connotation, what are those energies?
I think that they are quite literally, I think that they have two spectrums. And again, it's how I was, describing people becoming more woke. I think that there is an individual energy. We are all our own individuals, all our own people. We have our own psyches and our own subconsciousness. However, we are also a part of a larger working inner consciousness. So we've got our individual energy that is connected to the larger energy, and energy is all the same. So it's basically like we are, all one and the same, but we still have our own, individualized personalities and our own traits and our own attributes that make us us.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so that's good. That was good. I actually think I'm going to start doing that more often. That it just fills in blanks. All right, I have this nagging question, and I'm not sure why, and it's not one I usually ask, but the image of someone I used to follow years ago when I was on Facebook came up, and she kind of coined a term, and then it got, I think, co-opted by I don't know whomever, but the world now knows it by another term. But her name is Starfire Tor, and she coined it as time slips, and then now time slips are kind of talked about as Mandela effect. Mm-hmm. Have you been Mandela affected? What do you think about that whole experience?
I like that. Yeah. So that's going to fall under the realm of, what some people call a glitch in the matrix, what some people call, deja vu.
Mm-hmm.
Some people call misremembering.
Yeah, right. I don't know. I don't remember. I don't know.
Oh, Jerry, I love you.
For me, I think everything is much more simplistic than we make it out to be. For me, it all comes down to energy and energetic travel, or soul travel, or astral projection, or time travel. I think it's all the same. We just have different ways to express it, just different ways to access and to embody it. But for me, I think that because we are all our own people and we are all experiencing and creating our own realities, but so it's going to be different again for everybody. But for me, I think it all comes from the same place, that your psyche. Once you figure out where that comes from and how to pull it up outside of you and how to access it, that's I think exactly what soul travel and traveling in your dream states and lucid dreaming and remembering past life experiences. I think it's all the same. I think it's all just like different mechanisms to the larger working inner consciousness. Like if you picture it as like a really big lucid machine, and all of these things are just like little bolts and nuts and gadgets that are connected to the bigger machine, so that they all have their own individual traits, but they're all connected. So they're all significant and they all need each other in order to make the world turn.
Okay. So with so honing in on some of like the classic examples with the Mandela effect, like
Mhm.
the Berenstein Bears versus the Bernstein Bears. Did you have any of those specific did any of that ring true for you? I can't remember some of the others.
Mm, no, but again, even if it did, I don't know if I would remember. It seems like my experiences and my realities growing up, like the more I talk to other people, like the shit that I saw and the shit that I experienced was so much different than what other human people experienced. So no, would definitely, I haven't had a deja vu in quite a while, but I definitely have, experienced glitches that I couldn't explain, deja vus, or just, very simply, walking into a room that, or like a state that, you've never been to before, but where everything is. It's like, how do you explain that? So I experience things like that all the time. I don't necessarily think it's I don't necessarily call it the Mandela effect. For me, it's just like getting little bits and glimpses of my inner consciousness. It's like they're little validations from the universe that I'm on the right path, that I'm being shown these different things. And they don't always make sense, but they're always relevant.
Yeah, very good. Um, I hear you. We're all so different and everything. And this is what we talk about. This is why it's all kind of intangible. Memory and reality gets fuzzy once it's moved past the now. And
Yeah.
and so it makes things interesting when pondering ideas like reality shifts.
Yeah.
What is the weirdest experience you've had in your life so far? I mean, just, and it can be under any category, just something that shook you the most.
Mm. Top of the list would be the ET encounter, but we already know about that. So I will tell you guys about probably the thing that's second on my list. That was a few years ago. I'm a toucher. So when I do paranormal and parapsychological research work, when I conduct investigations, I walk into somebody's place of residence, or their business, and I make it known to outside stimuli that they're allowed to touch me. Most people don't do that. It makes them uncomfortable, but I communicate through touch and feel, so I'm able to pick up on more when I let them touch me. So with that said, being touched never surprises me. I get touched, I get poked. One time I got a really firm hand on my ass at the end of an investigation up in Washington, and I get like my shirt tugged on all the time. Sometimes I get pushed, but one time I got touched and it really jolted me. I was getting into bed. I wasn't asleep yet, so this, wasn't a sleep state. But I was getting into bed, and I was alone. I was by myself. I had two hands that cut off at the wrist, so no arms, no human body, no nothing other than hands. Two hands around my throat. They were big, large male hands with big fat fingers, with big fat fingernails. I could look down and I could see them. They were on my throat. They were choking me. They were actually physically there. I could feel them. And I was like in my bed rolling around, with my hands up against my throat, trying to breathe and slap these hands away. And I don't know if I fought them off for 3 seconds or 30 seconds or 30 minutes. I don't know. I just remember being absolutely terrified. And I still remember what they looked like. They were like old man hands, and they were very strong. And then they just eventually dissipated. They just went away, and they never came back. And I talked to a colleague of mine shortly after it happened. And it was funny because he works as a professional psychic. He knew about it before I told him. He's like, yeah, I know what you're going to tell me. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you do you? And I was like, well, this has never happened to me before. Where did these hands come from, and why were they so angry? And I never told him about when I do dream, I have, past life memories. And he was like, oh yeah, they're connected to your past life memories that you have. This was just some guy that you did wrong and he was mad at you, and, he found you in this life and he was seeking retribution. I was like, what? Slow down. So, yeah, so that happened. So that's real. So they, understanding that energy can take on different forms, and it's not necessarily biological, but it is tangible. So that's definitely a new reality.
Oof, that's.
Are you only a what do they call it? Psychometry, right? With people or things too?
No, I can do that with things as well.
Cool. That would be my secret superpower.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't work every single time, but I have I have participated in pretty profound parapsychological experiments over the years that have been drafted and documented and published in different publications. So, working, as a psychometrist and reading, information from certain people and objects. So yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, did you ever see that movie? It was an old movie called Vibes with Cyndi Lauper and
I saw it.
Jeff Goldblum.
No.
Was it called Vibes, Jerry, or was it something else?
It was called Vibes, Vibes.
I totally remember it, though.
Yeah, Goldblum was a psychometrist, and Lauper was she just had a very talkative spirit. Who was...
It's like early 90s or late
80s. 80s. It was in the 80s for sure. Great movie.
Like 1990.
Peter Falk was in it.
Yeah, I love Peter Falk. I forgot all about that movie. That's awesome, Jerry.
It's a great movie.
Okay, so I guess this is going to head up my, I've got a two-parter here. Mm-hmm. And actually, I think I forgot the one part. So that's hilarious. I usually write down everything. So the idea of death, mm-hmm. right? So we've already talked about that we could possibly be dead, what this is that we're experiencing now and all that. And you've really brought a lot of that. Like I didn't have to, there's so many things I just didn't even have to ask you. And again, you came in with your real strong sense of what your idea of dreams is. So I felt like I didn't have to linger in there very long. Okay. But this idea of death, okay, the other part came to me. So throughout the historical records that we have, there are seated within every culture stories of immortals, fascinating stories of immortals and of all kinds. And some that are, a lot of them that are actually tangible immortals, and some that are not. But where's your stance on that ability? Now, I already know you don't believe we die. I don't, at least. Mm-hmm. And I thought I heard you say that. Mm-hmm. So, right, there's a sense of immortality with just that perspective. Yeah. But if we ground this back down to the reality of the collective that we're having, where you're across the river from me and Jerry's in Georgia and all this, where we have these parameters, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a sense of a grounded reality. The idea of a long-lived immortal, even in the Bible that talks about, people living very long lives. What are your thoughts on that? Is that a reality? Can that happen within reality? I can't remember the famous Jewish one. Oh my God, it's so fascinating. And then with that, I want to transition into the idea of death. Mm-hmm. And since it's something that is part of the contract we signed coming into this reality, and that's a real contract we signed, because we all know in here that that's a process that we're going to go through. Mm-hmm. And however you package it, it's still something you're going to go through. You're going to unpack when you die. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of want to lead from the idea of immortality within the flesh into the idea of the eternal in the idea of death that's non-physical.
Okay, this is a great topic. This is very theological. I can't call myself a theologian yet because I don't have my PhD yet, but as an inspiring theologian, like, this shit is so fascinating for me.
Me too. It's great.
Oh my God, I love it. Yeah, it's so much fun. So yeah, I absolutely do believe in the plausibility of immortality. And yes, looking at it from a what you just said, an inner consciousness perspective, what we know that we are made up of energy. We know that energy can't be destroyed. It just transfers and it alters, it turns into something else, whatever that may be. Ergo, there is no death. So we know that. So getting that out of the way, that means that immortality does exist on some form, but to what extent? How far does that immortality reach? And so is that immortality on an energetic form, and what does energy mean essentially? So if every time I leave a meat sack, every time I leave a physical body, am I still me? Do I still carry on the same attributes and personality, and the same taste in music, and the same flares of things that make me me? And is that the definition of immorality or immortality? Is that something that makes an individual, or is it even not that? Is it something more complex or more simple than that? So for me, from a theological perspective, I think the most easiest reference, being in a Christianized society here in America, I look at the life of Jesus Christ, and it's a really fascinating area of theology, in dealing with uh, the life of Jesus Christ, if he did actually exist. It's this area of academic study called Christology, where you're actually, it's so fascinating. Like Christology and moral theology are probably my favorites. I'm such a nerd for that shit. But with Christology, essentially what we do is we break down and examine and scrutinize the divinity of Jesus Christ versus the humanity of Jesus Christ. So, how divine was he? If he was divine, we know that he was allegedly half human. That makes him a hybrid, or that makes him a demigod. And we know that notion has come from a lot of other cultures, a lot of older cultures. We're looking at Gilgamesh from Mesopotamia, and we're looking at of course, like all the other Greek gods, and the whole idea of uh, immortality and divinity living inside of human beings is a major tenet in Hinduism as well. And we know that Hinduism is a very archaic pagan philosophy. And Hinduism teaches us that reincarnation is in fact real. And Hinduism is also really big on expressing the self through, time travel and astral projection and time loops and all that fun stuff. So, um, the point is that we are seeing in all of these different major religions and faiths and cultures from throughout the whole world, and like every corner of the human earth, some aspect of immortality. But what does it mean for religions? They say, oh, immortality exists, but you have to, you're committing these sins, so you have to go through this hierarchy, you have to climb this ladder, and you have to right all of these wrongs before you can get it. And then we've got these other cultures that say, no, you're already immortal because you're already divine. If a actual historical Jesus Christ did exist, the whole point of his existence was to prove to the rest of us, to the rest of humans, that hey, we are half divine as well. We are hybrids as well. We are demigods as well. And that's the whole notion of that theological debate behind the Christology of Jesus Christ. How human was he versus his divinity? If he was half human and half divine, and if he actually, did have children, and he probably did, all evidence points to that he did, then that means that there is, a blood race of Jesus Christ that exists on this earth. And, some people would say that that's, more of a royal, human
Some
blood race, what have you.
Merovingians. It's the
Yeah.
Merovingians. Everyone's gone through that already.
Yeah, I know. And it's so fascinating, but for me,
It's a fruitless quest, I think. It's
I
all
know.
bullshit, like fake trails the Templars put out just to fuck with people.
Yeah, and we know that that's true. Yeah, that's so fascinating. Yeah, that's a whole other area of like theological history that is so much fun.
Imagine how much of our history today that we have been told is actually that kind of fuckery from.
Oh my God,
Yeah,
yes.
right.
Absolutely. And that's why I always say, like if somebody, chooses to be a part of the religion, okay, cool. But, don't let yourself be limited to just that, because there are so many other ideologies and philosophies. And that's what true spirituality is, looking at everything from a larger perspective, from all the different religions.
Totally.
So totally. So for me, I think that, reincarnation is real. I think that therefore, ergo, that immortality is real. And I think that, if it's not necessarily real in a tangible form, because we know that, we're made up of atoms and molecules, and we know that, every day that we age, and that, once our life force leaves our biological body, that, it starts to decay, and it starts to mold, and it starts to break down, and it, goes back into the earth. But that it goes back into the ecosystem, it's food for something else. So there's immortality in that scientific and biological sense as well. So from all areas of the spectrum, I would say, yeah, immortality is real.
So there's aside from like the bigger stories
was that
where
the question, is immortality real?
The question was, is it possible?
Okay.
So and I based the question off of all of these old texts and
like Noah's 900 years old, that kind of shit.
Yeah, well, alleged, and so it can tie into, we have myths of immortals all across the world still, and that are devoid of religion, that are even on the darker side, say the vampire, and that comes out of more than just what we've been told with the current idea of not the Victorian vampire, but the medieval vampire, the ghoulish one. And so there's this famous immortal. I'll think of him later. He's Jewish. He's not Jewish. He actually, he's just born, he's Hebrew, and he's, that was what he was, came in as. And then there's a story going around about him. I can't think of it. And I'm sorry, people, that's so tacky.
Yeah, I should know what you're talking about. Yeah. So
but it's out there. Anyway, so I'm pondering the idea, if reality is possibly mutable, and if we have the ability to, if somehow we're able to unlock channels of consciousness and rearrange
get a hold of our projection.
What this is assuming, right? This is assuming all that work is already done. That we've pulled in, we've done true. This in Jungian terms. We've individuated, and we've got this sense of wholeness, and our projections in the outer world are done. So this is at a higher level, and which is why you hear about it from like a weird monk up in the mountains somewhere, or it's always these estranged people from society that have gone beyond. And we see it in literature. It's always that one out in, you go the elder, right? You go and you get the wisdom you need from the elder that is possibly an immortal. So, okay. So with that, we can talk about that all night. So your ideas of death, though. So, and as you encounter it, so you work with the dead, but as you ponder on your own idea of, and especially in a lot of magic, like I was always taught that this was a teaching for me, is to draw power from your own death when it happens, right? And while you're alive, this is a great moment of energetic, and an energetic explosion. This is a supernova when you pass. And it's massive amount of energy. And so if you can draw upon it all along, there's something to be had there. There's something juicy to be had, and possibly can take you to a new level of awareness and ability within this reality of a dream we're in. And so what are your ideas on death, on those terms, on the terms of it's more than just a portal, more than just shrugging off the meat suit?
I know.
Give us a little bit of your ideas on death, and then I open up to the audience for questions.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm waiting for you guys to wrap it up so I can ask.
Sherry's like, hello, I'm still here. Oh, hi, Sherry. Hi, when did you come?
Whenever possible, whenever possible.
It's funny, for me, something I say all the time is, yay, death. I love the idea of death. I'm not just fascinated by death. I love death. I view death as something so positive and so enlightening and so beautiful. And I think when people break it down, that um, when people are afraid of death, of course, it's natural to be afraid of what you don't know, because we don't, know for sure what's going to happen, when we leave our meat sacks. But that should be the exciting part of it. It's half terrifying, but that's also, the exhilarating part of it. That's still like the larger part of our human experience is what comes after we die. Yay, death. But I don't think it's just that. I think what people are afraid of is the pain. People are most humans have the lowest pain threshold. It's ridiculous. And everybody is afraid to get hurt. Everybody is afraid to suffer. And I think that those are privileges. I think every time you hurt, every time you get your feelings hurt, every time you get physically hurt, every time your heart gets broken, every time something really traumatic that happens to you, that shifts you, those are all privileges, because those are all, different stepping stones on your path to true spirituality and living your full human experience. So it's these painful moments, and it's the hurts and the traumas that shape us. And it's that I think that is the strongest human emotion, because yes, we can all feel happiness and we can all experience love, but it's the shitty stuff that really changes us, and it's that stuff that's worth living for. So I tie that into everything. I tie that into my personal work, I tie that into my professional work. It's understanding that it's okay to feel hurt, and what an honor it is to be somebody intelligent enough to experience all of these emotions, and that I have the capability to control them and manipulate them and recycle them. And again, to create the reality that I want to live in, not just, for myself today, but the reality that I think I'm creating when I leave my meat sack. That's the whole point. Like, I love my life. I'm a pretty happy person. I think everything is great all the time, but I'm not doing what I'm doing for myself right now. I'm not very good at living in the moment. I'm always thinking about what's going to happen down the road. I'm always thinking, literally, I think about death all the time. I work with dead people. I think about, okay, well, if I do this today, and if I finish writing this, or if I meet with this clientele, or if I try to sit down and get in touch with one of my witch grandmas today, or do something today, that's going to get me closer to where I think I need to be when I die. Or, if I can create the reality that I want after I die, if I can understand everything that happens after I die, then I'm getting closer. That to me is like the whole point. And that doesn't mean that, I can, subtract the whole human experience of, living in the now, because that's very important as well. I need to, let myself be free and experience what I meant to experience. But for me, death is the greatest goal, the greatest achievement. I think that it's going to be how we die, and where we choose to be in that moment of death, and what happens right after we open up and we realize that we're dead. I think that that's when we're going to know everything that we're meant to know. I think that that's when we're going to remember everything that we forgot. And I feel that very strongly, because with that, the first profound ET experience that I had when I was astral projecting, and the ETs popped in and they were like, get out, get out, get out. I remember when I was in that frame of mind, the old Asian lady version of myself that was showing me past life versions of, different lives that I lived before the ETs intercepted me. I kept saying, oh, yeah, I remember. Oh, yeah, how could I forget? I remember. How could I possibly forget this? And when I came back to, that was one of the most profound things that I took from that entire experience, because I have a really bad memory. I have a terrible memory problem. And so the fact that I went to such a lucid location and had such a profound experience with what I believe was, you know, a past life version of myself, another psyche of myself. And in that moment, when I was up there with myself, I remembered everything. And I felt so stupid that I forgot all of these amazing things. And I try, and that's something that I try to think about with my work now. Like I just held a workshop on utilizing the Ouija board. It was a great event. Like it was such a fun night. But I think about that. I take myself back to where I felt that moment before the ETs intercepted me, where I remembered everything and how empowered I felt. And for me, I think that is going to be symptomatic of death. That's how we're going to, when we die, we're going to remember everything that we forgot, because we're not going to be limited anymore. We're not going to be tethered to the earth anymore. So that's what death means for me, I guess.
Thank you. That was great. And
that was hard to answer.
It's famously like one of the famous ponders. And what I love is that we all have a different take on it.
Yeah.
And just like dreaming and reality and all that. And so that's what we're interested in, is what are the differences. And in those differences, we find a lot of similarities. But so Jerry, I know we seem to carry on. It's already been 2 hours, so yeah. I'm sure you.
Oh my God!
I know, girl, we just carrying on. But I'm energized tonight, so this is great.
I'm falling asleep over here. Gosh.
Sorry, Jerry.
No, it's late for me. It's 1 a.m.
He's on the East Coast. All right, so question.
I'm looking. So.
I'll just say hello to everyone in the chat. I'm not in there, obviously.
Brother of famous musician Chick Corea, Joseph Corea, is here and has asked.
I love Chick Corea.
I don't think they're related.
Okay.
Well, I'm sure
I do
they
love
are.
Chick Corea, though.
Do you practice ceremonial magic, and if so, any particular system? In a paragraph or less.
Right. I can't do that. Pass.
You almost made me spit my tea out. That's hilarious.
Yes, Solomonic. Yes.
Yes.
Chaos.
Yes.
Witch magic.
Actually, yes, a little bit of everything. Mm-hmm. Quite literally, a little bit of everything. And I am not drawn to one particular area. I am not drawn to one particular tradition. I think the key is skipping around and finding something that works for you. Again, it's an organic process. So I literally partake in everything.
Super duper. All right. Here's another question. This was from Joseph again, I believe. How does it feel to be named after a state?
It feels pretty awesome, because Montana is the most amazing state ever. Montana is just so free. It's so liberating.
Montana is fantastic. I love it.
Oh my God, it is. And I've always said that if there is a God, she has to live in Glacier National Park. It's just the definition of paradise. It's complete, just mountainous, heavenly, complete openness. It's like there are no words.
Girl, you're getting me wet. I love Montana too.
There's that synchronized cackling again.
Oh my God, we just became best friends.
I know. All right, Jerry, back to you.
Thank you.
Why is it inappropriate? I saw that look on your face.
No, because it's going to be a lot. No, there's no.
You're like, yeah, Montana can't answer.
Inappropriate is a word that the show does not recognize.
Okay.
All right. So the other question he asked was, in your opinion, what is the alchemical, quote, first matter? Quote.
What is my opinion of what?
What is the alchemical first matter? I don't even know what it means.
That's a good question.
That is a good question.
In a paragraph or what?
No, I'm going to need to think about that one.
Okay.
I want to think about that one. That's a really good question, and I want to give it a thought-based answer. Yeah, so maybe we
might have to tweet that out.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah. No, seriously. Yeah, that's a great question.
All right, we'll get a tweet. Maybe you could write a blog post about it or something.
All right. in as many paragraphs as I want, Jerry.
As many as you want. No, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to rush it all. But...
Oh, no.
Oh, and this was the other one. Have you ever had a near-death experience?
Oh.
That's very Nox Mente.
Yes, it is. That is an excellent question. You know what? Unfortunately, I don't think I have. I've never been severely hurt. I've never been severely diseased. I've never had to be in the hospital. I've never even broken a bone. I've had scares. Like when I was little, I thought that I was going to drown one time. And my mom was like, no, you didn't almost drown. You were fine. But, I thought I was going to drown. But no, I haven't, unfortunately. And that sucks because I want one.
Yay, death.
Okay. Yay, death. That is awesome.
Okay, one more last question, then we'll call it. What is your opinion of panpsychism?
A panpsychism?
Of panpsychism, yes.
A panpsychism. And somebody look that up for me real quick?
I'm doing it right now.
Thank you. We're going to learn something.
I know what it means. I just can't remember. It's a doctrine or belief that everything material, however small, has an element of individual consciousness. It's like animism, sort of.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a very well-known pagan tenet as well. Yeah, that everything is a part of everything has a collective voice. Everything has its own pneuma, its own life force. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean honestly, if you have the perspective that our existence is it's born from consciousness, it's projected through consciousness, however you want to look at it that way, then of course it does, because everything is made from consciousness, would have consciousness in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, the whole idea of pantheism, not necessarily everything being related to a god or a specific godhead, but that there is divinity in everything and everyone. I fully believe that.
All right, one more question from Joseph. What I don't know how to phrase. I don't know what it is. Santisima Muerte.
San Muerte
not Santa Muerte. It's Santissima Muerte. I don't know what that is. I'm looking it up. Hold on. Saint. No, it's not.
Oh, isn't it the same thing? Just
I thought it's the same.
Okay, so yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah. So I suppose Joseph, if he's asking me like if I like her, yeah, she's my homegirl. She's also she's just another cultural personification of death and therefore destruction and by consequence creation as well. She's associated with healing and protection and all the things that a great female deity is supposed to be in charge of.
Boss lady.
Oh, right. Totally the boss lady. Yeah, just like Holly, my girl.
Cool. Great. Well, it's been great talking to you tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Did you?
It's been great having you sit there, listen. Well,
while you wax on. It's okay. It's my job.
I know. Yeah, and you're right. I didn't realize how late it was over there for you.
It's all good. I'm not. No complaints. Do you have anything you'd like to plug?
I have so many new things that will be coming up for our new year. Happy New Year. And for 2019 and 2020. So I will be making official announcements soon. So I want everybody to keep up with me with my brand new website that I just launched over the summer, www.montanajordan.com. You guys can keep up with me there. And I want to connect with my public more. So I encourage people to go to my site, and there's at my last page, there's a contact me tab where you guys can just send me a message, say hi. If people just want to check in and let me know, where they're listening from, and if anybody has a question, and then of course contact me on, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. I definitely want, people to keep up with me. And I am working on a bunch of major projects, and they're coming out a lot more slowly than I thought they would be, because time is obviously an issue. Adulting is hard, but I've got a lot of big things in the works. So really excited to share that with everybody soon.
Great. Sounds great. And I put all links for those the sites you mentioned in the description, and they're also in the show notes channel in our Discord server. Please join if you'd like to chat with us. So
Absolutely.
That's it for me and Nish and Montana. Next week we have Corinne Boyer from Maple Mistwood.
Yay. Yes.
She's
she's a
witch.
Washington native. Or not native. She lives out here though.
She's like a herbal witch or herbal holistic healer.
Yes. Awesome.
Medicine woman. There we go. That's what I was looking for.
She's fantastic. This will be it's great. I just want to say thank you, everyone. It's happy Samhain. Montana, you were fantastic.
Oh no, thank you. Yeah, and happy Samhain. This is such
an my love to the chat.
Right. Yeah, and such an honor to be on this show tonight of all nights. This is such a huge night. So
yes,
happy Samhain to everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for spending it with us.
Yes,
of course. No, the honor is mine. I appreciate it.
All right, we're out. Later, guys. Have a good one.